Hey everyone, this is Melina,
Hey guys, it's Arielle.
and today we're going to be talking about the last Hobbit movie, The Battle of the Five Armies. It was Ariel's first time ever watching
Yeah.
it.
hmm
So that's exciting. So I'm going to quickly read the plot and then we can kind of talk a little bit overview about like what you thought, what your experience was, because I'm really interested in, I mean, I know a little bit because you obviously
I
texted
was live
me.
texting you the entire time. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I think it would be good for you to share some of those thoughts
hmm
here. So this movie came out in 2014, right after the year after the last movie came out. And the plot is after the dragon leaves the lonely mountain, the people of Lake Town see a threat coming. Orcs, dwarves, elves, and people prepare for war. Bilbo sees Thorin going mad and tries to help. Meanwhile, Gandalf is rescued from the necromancer's prison, and his rescuers realize who the necromancer is. So there's quite a lot going on in this
Yeah.
movie. So I'm just curious to hear like what your thoughts were, like what you thought about the movies as a whole, just like your general reactions to it, like if it's more of a positive, more of a negative. I'm also curious to know like I know that there's a lot of controversy, not the right word, but like disagreement over whether or not it needed to be three movies because it's one book.
Okay.
Um and like whether or not you feel like it did need to be split up or it could have
hmm
all been one movie or two movies, which I think was the original plan. It was originally planned to be two movies. So just like tell us your thoughts.
I really liked this one. I think I said this one was like my favorite
Mm,
out of the three, but I think that's because it had more like action in it. Like we talked about in the last episode, I was kind of like with the second one, I was just kind of like, okay. like or no, I think it was more like the first one. I was kind of like,
mhm.
okay. Second one, I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere. But this one, I would say, is definitely like my favorite. I think that one really kept my attention a lot more. I think it's because it's one, the last one.
Mhm.
And two, we already know what it was leading up to, which was like the big battle fight and everything. So there's like that anticipation. But I really like this one. I didn't know it was just one book. And they split it into three movies.
Yeah.
But I feel like it kind of makes sense to do that. Maybe, hmm, yeah, maybe they could have like put the first two as one movie and then like made this one its own movie, like made it two movies instead of three. Because
Mhm.
I remember when I was talking about how like how Smaug ended, I was just kind of like, that's it. Like it was kind of like, okay. Um, so I think if they had combined the first and the second one together, I think that would have been a nice made like a duology instead of
Yeah.
like a trilogy. But um yeah, I think that would have made more sense. But I think isn't The Hobbit like really long, like the book itself?
I don't know actually. Let me find out. The Hobbit page length. Dramatic. It's 304 pages, which isn't that
Not
long. Especially
terrible.
for fantasy, it's not that long.
Yeah. Okay, then I see why people would say like it didn't need to be three movies.
Mhm.
Maybe two, but
Like Fellowship of the Ring is 479 to compare.
yeah. But then again, you did say there are a lot of details in that book.
There's so many. It just started to get really interesting though.
Okay.
But that's because they like are meeting like the actual fellowship.
hmm
But I feel like my thing is I don't care about the Shire. And they
mm
were in like the Shire slash Hobbit lands for like 11 hours of the audiobook. And I was literally like,
Yeah, no.
enough. I don't care.
Yeah.
But anyway.
But anyway, with this movie, definitely had me intrigued. I had a lot of notes in this one.
Mm,
Now that I'm looking at my notes and stuff, my color code system was switching up. I loved it because I had each place had a certain color associated
that's cute.
with it. Um, and I was just like, oh, wow, change the color now. We're in a different spot. But I really liked it. I feel like this one had a good flow. It had a good flow to it that kept me like engaged. I think that's what it was. I think that's
Mm.
probably what it was.
So do you think, I know you said this is your favorite of the Hobbit movies. Do you think like if you were to rank all six movies together, do you think that this one would fall below all the Lord of the Rings movies? Or is there like a Lord of the Rings movie that you feel like it could pass?
I don't know. honestly, I feel like the Lord of the Rings movies would still be top 3,
Hmm.
and then the Battle of the 5 Armies would be, like, number 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's how I would rank it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
I don't know,
hard
I
to
just
beat
really
them.
like the Lord of the Rings movies.
They're so good.
Yeah. I know it's, like, the same director and everything, but I'm just like, I don't know what it is about Lord of the Rings I just like better. But, yeah, that would definitely be my ranking. I'd definitely say the trilogy of Lord of the Rings would be top 3, and then Battle of the 5 Armies would be number 4 on the
Hmm.
list,
Got it.
and
Well,
then Smaug, and then Hobbit.
yeah, I feel like I thought that Smog was my favorite, but then watching it this time, I was kind of like, actually, I think I like this one a little more
Mhm.
because there's
Yeah.
so many good quotes and there's like so much
Mhm.
happening. Like I texted you and I was like, the first 10 minutes alone is like
Yeah.
it's like its own episode, its own
Yes.
movie. Um, and then that whole like dragon scene ends and you're like, what's gonna happen now?
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, I remember we talked about that when we ended um Smaug, where I was just like, okay, so there's gonna be basically 2 plots in this movie because
Mhm,
they have to defeat Smaug, but then also the war is coming.
right. So let's talk about Smaug first, because that's how the movie begins. So it starts with like straight up just like darkness, chaos. Smaug, in his pettiness, has decided like
Mhm.
I am going to destroy Lake Town. Also, I realized that I was confusing Dale and Lake Town when I was like writing my notes. Dale is where they used to live. Lake Town is where they live now, but they're still the people
Mhm.
of Dale. So
Yeah.
it's very similar, but they're different things. So now he's raining down fire on
Yeah.
Lake Town.
Very
People,
gruesome.
yes, people are fleeing. There's literally like dead bodies like
Yep.
everywhere. It's they're like getting in their boats and paddling away.
Mhm.
The first lines of the movie is the master saying, "I warned you. Did I not warn you what would come of dealing with dwarves? Now they've done it. They've woken the dragon. They've brought the apocalypse upon our heads," which of course is very ironic. He's acting brand new, like he wasn't
You're
the one who sent
right.
Thorin into the mountain in the
Right. As
first
if he
place.
wasn't right. I was like, you're the one that, okay, it's fine. It's fine.
Right, right. So then he flees and takes a bunch of gold, leaves everybody
Mhm.
behind to die,
Yep.
basically. Insinuates that they're just like not worth saving.
Mhm.
And then
Like, people are literally begging him, and he's like,
they're like
no.
shoving people out of the way with like their
Mhm.
oars. And then ironically, Alfred says, "Oh, we're carrying too much weight. We need to lose something." And then the master pushes him off, which is like, that's what you
Period.
get.
I literally wrote, "The master dumps Randall. Amen."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, he allied himself with somebody who had proven that he valued gold over people, so I don't know
Yeah.
why he was
I
shocked.
don't know why he thought he was even gonna make it.
Right. And so then Bard, well, Toriel is like, we need to go, takes Bard's kids, and then the dwarves who are still in the house, and Bard is still trapped in that little
Yeah,
jail
cage
cell.
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and he gets out in like literally the most dramatic way possible. So before we talk about like the fighting with Smaug, what did you think of this whole like chaotic beginning, which is, remember we talked about this, like I feel like third movies usually start like this where it's like everything is
Yes.
on fire,
Mhm.
everyone is like running for their lives,
Yeah,
it's just
just
straight up
chaos. 'Cause
chaos.
we know what's gonna happen. Like, we know what we're preparing for.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I mean, I pretty much just wrote down like the things that I like what was happening. So I was just saying like the humans are panicked, and like the master is pressed about himself, of course.
Hmm.
Um, oh, I don't know if you noticed it, but I thought the CGI looked weird when like the wasp was in the house with them. Like, it was like a
Oh,
weird filter or something. And I was like, why does it look like that? I don't know if anyone knows what I'm talking about, but it was like they were in the house and it had like a filter around her. And I was like, this looks weird. But that was just a thought that I had.
I wonder if that was intent. I don't know what you're talking about, but I wonder if that was like an intentional like
Maybe to
weird.
make her look like ethereal or something, but it just looked odd inside the frame.
Hmm.
It's okay.
Well,
Um, but Smaug is, doing his thing, burning everything and just doesn't care.
mm,
So yeah, I was just like, okay, here we go. This is the beginning. How's it gonna go? And then we have like the dwarves looking from across the way and they're sad. And they're like, dang. But then, Thorin is being kind of weird. Like he's just
Yeah.
standing there on the mountain, just looking at his kingdom, like
Right. Everyone
just
else is looking at
staring.
Lake Town on fire and he's staring at the mountain. I'm like,
And I'm like,
what do you think
what?
is gonna happen? What do you think something's gonna come out of there?
I didn't really I was like, is so I thought like I was like, is something drawing him to be in there? Because I was just like, you were just in there. Why are you like staring so intensely
Yeah.
at it? Maybe kind of like what you said, maybe he thought like something, maybe Smaug was gonna come back and like they were gonna have to protect it, maybe.
Maybe.
I
I
don't
think
know.
also they were trying to give us like direction of where the priorities were.
Right?
Like
Yeah.
their priorities were like, oh my God, these people could die.
Mhm.
And he was like, my gold, even though
Yeah.
nobody is attacking. Though maybe he thought like, oh, because Smaug is, which does happen later in the movie, because Smaug is out of the mountain, maybe people are gonna
Try to come.
sneak attack or something.
Mhm.
So yeah, we'll talk about
But again,
Thorin.
no one was really thinking about you guys that much for you to think that.
No,
So
Thorin, for half of this movie, I literally just
yeah.
watching the movie. I'm like, please
Just
just get it together.
big sigh. It was just a big sigh.
Yes. One of the things too, I forgot to mention in the last movie, but is true of this movie too. I think part of the reason I like these ones better than the first one is that there's no Gollum.
Mhm.
And that makes it more enjoyable
Yeah.
to me. I don't like
I
Gollum.
feel like I think also too like the ring didn't really have much of a presence in this movie, not really until like the end,
Mm-hmm.
which I thought was interesting because in the second one they were like hinting at like how influenced the ring was or how influenced Bilbo was by the ring, but
Right.
like this one you didn't really see like any of that.
Yeah. Maybe they were trying to like keep that storyline contained because it's such a
Mhm.
big story. It's such a big storyline that it makes this storyline look dumb in comparison,
Mhm.
So maybe that's why they were like, let's
Yeah.
tone this down for a little bit. Like for example, like Saruman after the first like whatever, he appears like an hour in or something, 45 minutes,
Yeah.
and never appears again.
Mhm.
um but yeah, so we then get to this scene where, like you said, the dwarves are looking on, and then what's his face, Bard is running toward the bell tower because he wants to recreate like that
Mhm.
bow thing that's in Dale. But he has arrows that are not good
Not
enough,
working.
basically. Yeah, they're
Yes.
not working.
And then his son comes.
Yes, because they're all on the boat and they see him from afar, and Kili is like, I saw his arrow hit
Mhm.
the dragon. And Toriel's like, that's impossible. And I'm like, you guys are so
Mhm.
annoying. I don't
Yeah.
with your negativity, you've been alive for 600 years.
Right.
Clearly it's possible. You're old enough to know that
Yes, there's
it
a
worked
whole like
before.
legend around it. So there has to be some truth to it.
Right. So then Bane is like, I gotta go, and jumps and
Mhm.
brings his dad the arrow. And there, some of the things that the dragon is saying to him, I was like, this is so like Lucifer.
Biblical. Yes.
Yes.
I wrote down, you are forsaken.
Yeah.
No help will come. And I was like,
Mm,
interesting. Sounds
yeah.
like something the enemy would say.
That, and who are you that you would stand against me? Or who are you that would stand against me? I was like, and I texted you too. I was like, why does Smaug talk so much? I don't
Mhm.
understand. I don't understand why
I
he
think
stands
it's
there and
just
monologues.
I think it's just a villain thing. Like they just make villains talk. Like
Maybe.
I don't know. I think you said like it was like so it gives like the heroes time to like defeat them, which is fair. But I think it's also just like just get to the point. Like
But I think also like Smaug knows that Girion hit him because he was the one
mhm.
who was hit. Like he has the missing
Yeah,
whatever in his armor.
scale.
So maybe it's like he's just trying to get in Bard's head. Like he
Yeah,
wants Bard
that's
to
true.
think that he can't do it.
Yeah.
Um, so, but he is such a punk. And
Yeah.
also, even with what you just said about like no help will come, he doesn't need help. Like he's making Bard think that like you can't do this on your own,
Yeah. That's true.
but he can, and he does. Well, he does it
Mhm.
with Bane. And then that one scene where Bard has Bane essentially like be his
Like
bow
yes. Oh my god.
is so good. And Bane keeps turning around and he's like, Bane, look at me. And makes
Yes.
him face him as, and it's interesting too because one of the last insults that Smaug says to him is like, he calls him like Bo Man, and he emphasizes the
Mhm.
man. And that descriptor is exactly like the aspect of Bard that he uses to kill Smaug, which I was like, that's
Mhm.
really interesting.
Yeah.
You're zeroing in on the part that you're actually the most afraid of, but you're trying to
Yeah.
make it sound like an insult so that he's afraid.
Wow.
Um, but what were your thoughts about
Oh
that
no.
Bane Bard?
I thought that was probably one of the best scenes
Mm-hmm.
because I wrote down when he was like, "Look at me, you look at me," and I was like, and I wrote down, "A father tells his son to look at him while the enemy is on his way, as he prepares the weapon to destroy him." And I was like, "Holy shirts, that's literally God with
Mm-hmm.
us." Like he's like, "No, just look at me. Just keep your eyes on me. I got this."
Right. It reminded me a little bit of like two stories. It reminded me a little bit of like Abraham and Isaac, and
Mm,
also like God and Jesus.
yeah.
I feel like were the two things that those like kind of, obviously loosely, because nothing is
Mm,
like exact like Narnia,
right.
um symbolized. That it's like this idea of like, don't look, you don't fix your eyes on like this scary aspect of what's going on, just look at me. That's the
Yep.
most important thing. um and it also reminded me, I had to look it up because I can remember the exact wording, but it's a Psalm 127 verse 4, like arrows in the hands of a warrior are children born in one's youth.
Mm,
um so I thought that was kind of like cool that he literally like he made do with what he
yeah.
had.
Yeah.
um and then Smaug dies in the ugliest
R.I.P.
way ever. Like he dies with like his tongue out, and he's like, oh. He's like making like all these sounds and then falls into the sea.
Mhm.
And then you're like, what's about to happen? The
Yep.
dragon is dead.
Yep. And
You would
then
think that this is the point where everyone's like, yay, the dragon is dead. Let's all celebrate.
nope,
But it's only the beginning of
only the beginning.
it's only the beginning of the problems.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, any thoughts on like any other thoughts on that? The death scene, the
No,
arrow.
all I wrote there was R.I.P. Smaug. You had a semi good run.
Mm.
Yep. Good job, buddy.
I hope it was worth it.
Right. I hope. Yeah, because then it goes into kind of like where the dwarves are. Because then I wrote my next note, unless I missed something in between there, but my next note was like Thorin is losing it, I fear.
No, that's almost exactly what I have written. I wrote the Ravens return to Erebor. Thorin is slowly losing his mind.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, and now that I think about it too, like Smaug, he did not have to die. Like they honestly could have come to like some kind of reasonable, maybe not him and Thorin, but him and Bilbo, I feel
Yeah.
like could have come to some reasonable conclusion. But his pettiness and thirst for blood is what like he made himself vulnerable by
Mm-hmm.
coming out of his stronghold.
Yeah.
Um, so he played himself basically. Um,
All
anyway,
right. It's like do they kind of like keep going back and forth between like everyone's kind of like it's like resolving the thing because it's like the elves are leaving because Kili asks the wasp to leave with them, which I was like,
yeah,
bye. No. And Legolas is like, come on, we gotta go. Mission's over. Come
yeah,
on. Um, and
yeah.
then
This
like
movie switches a lot like between like plots because there's so much
mhm,
going on. Because then at the same time, so Thorin is having a thing. He's having a moment. Gandalf is still in the
yep.
cage. Galadriel telepathically tells him that he's not alone.
I was like, come on, Holy Spirit, we are not
Right,
alone.
right, yeah. And then we see this scene on the beach, and it always makes me laugh a little bit because it just reminds me of Lost, which
Mhm.
Evangeline Lilly is also in, like that first scene where they're all on the beach and like, ah. There are dead bodies literally everywhere. People are
Yeah.
pulling bodies out of the ocean, like
Mhm.
shaking people, trying to get them to wake up. Um, I just wrote Toriel and Kili have a moment because I didn't want to go into depth.
It
He
doesn't
tells
matter.
her that he loves her, I think, in Dwarvish. She's like, I don't know what that means. And he's like, I think you do. And it's supposed to be like nice, but it's literally just like,
No.
it's just no. Yeah.
That's
And
it.
also
That's why I
like,
said bye.
it's like, it's just,
It's forced.
it's so, that's exactly what I was thinking. It's
They're
so,
just trying to force feed us this. And I'm like, I don't want it. Like, they're like, please, here, it's good. I promise. And you're like, no, I don't want it. It's
right.
bad.
Right. He has to like tell her that he loves her so that we'll believe it, and yet we still don't. Like I
Yeah.
haven't seen any reason to make me believe that this is the case.
Mm-mm.
So I don't believe it. Also, I was like, why didn't they kiss? Like, if they're so in love, nothing is stopping them. It's not like he's being pulled away by something. Not that I wanted them to kiss, but I was like, why didn't they
Right.
give us that moment?
He
If that's
gives
what
her
they
the
wanted.
rock.
Yeah, he gives her a rock.
That was it.
The rock that was supposed to be his like promise to his mother that he would get home safe, which I'm like,
Why would you give that to her?
maybe this is the reason he dies. But
When we get there, we'll talk about that. Don't.
right.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then Legolas appears, and I just this time around too, I was like, I don't understand what he thinks he's achieving by being this like bossy and mean. Because isn't he supposed to be like in love with her? Does he think that
Are you talking about Legolas?
yes, Legolas,
Okay.
does he think that like by being like Toriel, let's go, and like I don't know, being
I
kind
don't
of a
know.
jerk, like she's gonna start liking, I don't know what's going
Or
through
maybe it
his
was
head.
just kind of like he was just jealous
Maybe.
thing. Like he was just being a jerk because he was jealous.
Maybe. So yeah. Thought any more thoughts on that beach scene? Well, actually, so
Well,
Alfred.
like, yeah, Alfred's trying to make Bard like the hero of the people, and he's like, literally leave me alone.
He's such a snake.
Ugh.
Alfred is well. I props to the actor for portraying like Snake so
Yeah.
well.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's like, I have always said that this man is a man.
Yeah.
And you're like, all right.
Let's roll the tape. Let's run that back really quick, actually.
Right. And so now there's like that really nice scene where they're all like, Bard saved us, but then they try to make him king and he's like, I don't want to be the king. I did not ask to be the king. Which in my head, I'm kind of like, I'm pretty sure he does become the Lord of Dale, according to the Fanpedia.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, I feel like the fact that he's like, I don't want to be king, like I just wanted to help, makes him like a good king. It kind of reminds me of Aragorn, who's kind of like, I don't know, like if you guys want to be the king, like,
right.
fine. I'm just trying to help. And another thing that I think makes him a good leader is that they're all like fighting with each other, and even with Alfred, and he has every right to be like, yes, beat him up, put him in the stocks. But he's like, we need peace. Like half our population just died.
Right. We've already been through enough.
We've already been through enough. We need to focus on rebuilding. We need to focus on finding food, building shelter, healing people who are wounded. And I'm like, this is a great man. Truly, this is a great man. So then actually, any more thoughts on that, the beach scene before we get back to the...
Nope, because then we go to the mountain / Erebor, and Bill was like, guys, we need to go. He's like, Thorin has not left the gold room for days. He will not leave. We got to get out of here.
Yeah, he like legit stops them at the door, and he's like, just leave. And in my head, like knowing what happens in the end, I'm like, if they had just left, they wouldn't have died. But they're not going to leave, obviously, because it's their family.
Right.
And Philly runs down to the gold room, and Thorin is literally just standing there, just staring at the gold. And they're all like,
okay,
what's going on here? And he turns around and he says something about like, these are the halls of gold of Thror, or something like that, which is like, is this really something you want to be proud of? Because Thror was the one who caused the dragon to come with his greed. You're focusing on the wrong part of your history.
Literally, I was like, yo, generational curses, man. Just, it's so weird how like, I guess like how easy it was for him to just get so like, because you would, I mean, not that you would think, but like, I thought that maybe, Thorin wouldn't be affected by the same thing. Like that he was just more focused about getting the mountain back, and that he was just going to like reestablish his family's like kingdom and stuff. But then like the like gold was like tempting him, and like him wanting to protect it became more important than anything else, which I thought was so interesting about how it was like easy for him to kind of ease into that.
Yeah, and none of them were impressed. Like they're literally all standing there like, what do we do? Like he's like bragging about the gold, and they're all like frightened at the sight of him. So that gives us some insight into like where he's at. and his priorities. And once again, like they should be celebrating, we have our home back. And he's like, look at all this gold.
Oh yeah, and then he's making them look for the Arkenstone.
Yes,
Just like his grandfather was making people look for gold.
because he's convinced that one of them has it, and he's not wrong. One of them does have it. It's just not the people that he thinks.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I wrote down. Okay, so I might have missed it, but I was like, I forgot that Bilbo took the stone. I was like, did they show us that? Like, did I miss that? I think I missed it.
It's in Smaug. It shows us that he has it and he puts it away. And
got it.
Yeah. And then Thorin asks him, and he's, a lot happens in the movie, so it makes sense. Like I completely forgot about this entire first scene in this movie, I think, because just so much goes on. So yeah, and it keeps like panning back and forth between all these scenes. Legolas warns that more people are going to come to the mountain, and we find out the reason for that later. Azog, you pointed this out. I did not notice that he like upgrades his arm weapon. It's now like a sword.
Yeah. So he's no longer fork arm. He is now knife arm, for those that knew that I was calling him that.
Yeah. Cannot imagine what kind of process he went through to remove one and put in the other. I can't imagine it was fun.
I'm sure he didn't even care or feel it.
Probably. He shows up with an army, and in this movie, they call Bolg the spawn of Azog, and I was like, spawn in what way? Like, because I was like, does that mean like he's like what Saruman does in the Two Towers, where he makes like the Urukai and it comes out of that like slimy thing? So I was like, did he create him like in a lab? But then I looked it up, and it says that he's like the son of Azog, which I was like,
actual son.
And I was like, ew. Like, I don't know why, but just ew. That's so gross to me.
Yeah. Because to me, they look the same age. If there's, if you can even kind of tell age with
right. Can you age an orc? I don't know.
Right. But to me, I'm like, they looked like they were the same age. So I didn't even think that.
So apparently he's a spawn.
Okay.
And he tells Bolg to go get the legions from Gundabad, which we've seen in the previous movie, so that they can bury the dwarves, the elves, and the men in the mountain. And you're like,
great.
One problem after another problem. Great. Toriel gets banished from going back to Mirkwood.
I was like, not banished.
Right. And Legolas is like, I'm not going back because my father cannot control my heart. And I literally went, this is not it. It really is not.
I really don't like that they tried to give this love triangle to us. We could have done without it.
Not a fan. And then I don't remember if it's at this particular point that they move into Dale, so that they can start heading toward the mountain. But I noticed that as they were doing that, the score was like the Lake Town music, but it was like slower. It was almost like it had been like broken down, which I think shows like their morale. That's where it is. Because they literally were just minding their business, and then a dragon came and like killed their loved ones and destroyed their town when they were already poor and struggling and suffering under the oppression of like a horrible man. So I feel really bad for the town of Dale. But
they really couldn't catch a break.
No, they couldn't. But in Lord of the Rings, they are doing very well.
That's good.
If you wanted
good
to know. Yeah. So yeah, I also wrote Bard is Lake Town Aragorn. I think I said in the last one that Thorin is sometimes like Aragorn, but I don't think that's really true. I think Bard is more like Aragorn. He has like good morals. People follow him. He's kind of like a natural leader, but he doesn't really care about the leadership role. He just cares about like the well-being of others, which makes him a good leader.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then we see Gandalf speaking in tongues in his cage, and Radagast is also speaking in tongues in some other place too. They're both speaking in tongues together, and then the orc is like, your little spells, they're not going to help you, and starts beating him up and trying to kill him. And then we see Galadriel barefoot
gliding, by the way. I was like, she doesn't walk, she glides.
I know. You have to pay attention to the way that she walks in Lord of the Rings. Like I said, when
I was like, oh, she's barely touching these stairs.
I don't know how she does it. It's amazing. It's very ethereal. She captured like elf really, really well, but like ancient kind of scary elf really well. Like, she did her role really well. And And she comes in, and Gandalf, the orc trying to kill him, is literally the ugliest orc I had seen up until this point. Like every time he turns around, I'm like, ew, why do you look like that? And he tries to, I don't even remember what he tries to say to her, but she literally goes, and he dies. Which is
yeah, because I wrote, okay, power.
Right. And so then she hears the like the very beginning of the Lord of the Rings movie when it talks about like the, 7 rings for the 7 dwarves in there, whatever.
The
And
Ghost
then
Kings come out? Is that what you're talking about?
what?
The Ghost Kings?
Yeah, and then she completes it, and then the 9 like wraiths come out, which they had been talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Because they found the empty tombs, and Radagast fought like the Witch King, the main one. And then they say to her, they like taunt her, and they say, "One light alone in the darkness," and she says, "I am not alone."
And then Squad comes out.
Yeah, and then Saruman comes out, and Elrond comes out, and as he comes out, this like dramatized Rivendell music comes with him, which is really cool. And I love the line that he comes in saying, he says, "You should have stayed dead," and then starts fighting them. And I'm like,
love.
Period. Energy.
Yeah. Oh, I wanted to be excited about Saruman, but then I was like, I know you betray them, so it's giving Judas.
It really is. No, it really is. And we can talk about the way that he's annoying, even in this particular moment. But what did you think of this, like, this scene, Gandalf being saved?
Oh,
like,
no, I loved it. I thought it was a great scene. All my notes are like all caps there. So loved it. I was like, yes, Arwen's dad, because I always forget his name. But yeah, I loved it. And then, Dark Galadriel comes out, and I was like, oh, okay. Yeah. Hey there.
Right. So Galadriel, like, she always has to do the thing, that thing that she does, because they see the eye, and then Sauron, I almost said Sauron twice, comes out toward them in like humanish form. Yeah. And they're like, oh. And I literally wrote in my notes, like, do you believe now, Saruman?
I literally was like, they realized that Gandalf was right. Like, he's been saying this the whole time, and you guys
Gandalf
like,
and Radagast, who was one of the first people to be like, this is witchcraft. And then Galadriel just rises up, and she is just going off.
Yep, rebukes him. I was like, wow, my God.
Yeah, she says, like, you are nameless, faceless, go back to the void from whence you came. And then he goes, and she, yeah, they catch her. But before she does that, Radagast shows up, your favorite person, and then rescue. I'm like, wow, this is like the Avengers right now.
Yes. No, that's literally what this movie was like. It was like, what is it? Not Infinity War. Endgame. Yep. When everyone just came out, and you're like, holy crap.
Yes. And then, yeah, so then he rescues Gandalf because, what's his face? Oh my gosh. Galadriel is like, what's her face? Excuse me. She's like, he will not survive here. And then she does that scary thing, drives him away. And then this is where Saruman gets annoying. Elrond is like, we need to warn Gondor about the fact that Sauron is back. And Saruman is like, no. Which I'm kind of like, who made you the king of this little squad? I'm pretty sure that there's no hierarchy. He's like, no. There's no necessity.
Basically, like, I'll handle Sauron myself. And it's like, sir, you didn't even know this man was back. You didn't even believe he was back.
Right.
Now all of a sudden you're going to be the one to take care of it.
And another thing he says too that's annoying is like, he has no stronghold in this world as long as he doesn't have the ring. And I'm like, but the orcs are in territories they shouldn't be in, which means that he already has a stronghold in this world. So what are you talking about? And what is the harm in warning Gondor about an oncoming threat, And then he's, like you said, he's like, leave Sauron to me. And you're like, oh, okay, so this is how you get messed up.
Because I was like, we know that's not going to happen. You're not going to be able to handle him. He's literally handling you.
Right.
By the first movie of Lord of the Rings.
Right. So he goes from saving Gandalf to imprisoning him himself. So, because he approaches it like in isolation, which I think just shows like we're not meant to do things in isolation. We're meant to do things in community. So Saruman is annoying. And I was telling Arielle, because I was reading all the IMDb trivia, this is the last movie that Christopher Lee completed before he passed away in 2015, and the last one that he saw, I think, released as well.
Oh wow.
So it's, even though I don't like Saruman, he was a great actor.
He
And
was,
it's,
yeah.
that little fight scene is a cool one to
Definitely.
go
I
out
liked
on.
it.
So yeah, so that was a cool scene. And then we go back to Thorin, who's continuing to lose his mind, still in the process of losing his mind.
Dragon sickness.
Yes, Balin says he has dragon sickness. He's forcing everybody to look for the Arkenstone because he's like, I know you have it. And then Balin says, like it's our birthright. I don't remember exactly what he says, but he's like, oh, it belongs to us. And then Thorin is basically like, it belongs to me because I'm the king. And then he threatens them, and he's like, if you find it and you don't tell me, I will be avenged. And I'm like, wow, like after all we've been through, you're like, I'm gonna kill you if
He literally doesn't care.
Yeah. And so then Thorin, Bilbo floats this, well, okay, actually before that,
is that when he's seen by Thorin and he like feels like he got caught? But then like they have like that kind of sweet moment where because Thorin's like, you're hiding something or something.
Yes. Yeah.
And then like he pulls out the acorn from like the first movie and he's like, it was because it's for memories and to remember all the things that we've gone through together.
Right. Yeah. So before that, Balin, or I don't remember if it's before that or if it's after that. My notes are kind of mixed up a little bit. But Balin basically tells Bilbo, like, if someone were to have found it, it would be better if wink 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 if Thorin did
You're
not
catching my drift.
Right. If you know of anybody who finds it, do not give it to him. So that's a sad scene. And then yeah, Bilbo has this thing, and he does have the stone, but what he's holding in that moment is not the stone. It's an acorn. He's like, yeah, I'm gonna plant it. He says, one day it'll grow, and every time I look at it, I'll remember it. And I'm like, oh,
so sweet.
It's really sweet and genuine. And it's actually nice to, once again, thinking about the fact that like Thorin does die in the end, and so do some other people. We won't mention that yet. We won't open that wound yet. And so it's nice to think about, like, I mean, trees are that, like, if you see a tall tree, odds are it's been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And they carry so many like stories. They've seen so many places and seen so many people.
Yeah. And then to be able to tell, future generations about it too. Like this tree is here because I went on an adventure.
Right. And so now Frodo can like look and see this is the, like I was also telling Arielle the part in Fellowship of the Ring that I'm at. I get why they didn't include this in the movie, because it would have been probably too much, and the Hobbit hadn't come out yet, like the movie. But Gloin appears and is like talking to Frodo, and he's like, oh, like you're the heir of like my old friend Bilbo. And then it's sweet because then he like sends off his son on a mission with Frodo. I'm like, this is so cute and wholesome. I love it. Arielle would love this because she loves Gloin.
I do. It's my favorite. Oh yes, because then even in this moment too with Thorin, he kind of comes back to himself a little bit. We see that where he's just kind of like being like his normal old self, but then he's told about like the Lake Town refugees because Bard is like, we need help, let's go talk to them at the mountain, and he's like, and I'm back.
So the Lake Town, the survivors start coming into Dale, and they see this from afar, and they literally start building walls to keep them out. I'm like, you guys, why? Like, why are we doing this?
What? Why? Because you guys were literally in their position, literally last movie. But
which is what Kili tries to say to Thorin. He's like, they have suffered enough, and Thorin is like, they know nothing of my suffering. And Kili's like,
not about you.
I actually don't even really agree with that statement, because what we went through, they went through. So I don't know why you're even saying that. And Thorin is so selfish in this moment. You can see it. He's like, they know nothing. They don't know anything about, and you're like, really? Because half of them just died because you went and you like poked the dragon.
Yeah.
So, and then while this is happening, the elves come into Dale. Thranduil comes in. I had told you that it was a deer, but it's apparently an elk, not a deer. And which I love.
mean, I was like, period. I literally wrote period drama mama on this steed, because that's what I call him.
Yeah.
Because he is a drama mama. Okay.
It's so like, it's such an elegant like entrance, and then like the antlers of the thing,
Mm-hmm.
him riding it. I'm like, this is amazing. It's funny like what people like. Gandalf rides a horse, and then the hobbits and the dwarves ride ponies,
Mm-hmm.
and then Thranduil rides an elk, and Radagast rides an eagle slash rabbits, and then you see
Yes.
Jane come in later riding a pig. Like it's just
Yeah.
funny like to represent like the kind of person
Right.
they are. So he brings them aid, but it's really like
It's not actually about helping them.
not at all.
I literally was like, oh, they came with resources. That's so nice. And then I was like, oh, wait, never mind. This isn't about helping them
Right.
because he wants these stupid gems that
Right.
are in the mountain.
Right. He's like, so I would like the rocks that are inside the mountain, and you are going to help me. And Bard is like, half my people are dead. Like, I don't understand.
But you guys are literally fighting over rocks.
Right. So Bard is, well, Thranduil is like, we're gonna go kill them. And Bard is like, let's talk about this for just a second. How about we not? He's like, I don't want any more war. I just want peace, basically.
Mhm.
Understandable after what
Yeah.
he's seen. So he's like, let me go talk to Thorin. So he talks to him through this little like hole in the wall.
Yeah.
And he makes like really, really reasonable requests. He even says something along those lines. Like, he's really not asking Thorin for much.
No,
He's
he's
not
literally just like, just help. That's it.
he's not asking for the Arkenstone. He's not saying give me half the gold. He's literally like, I know you have so much gold in there. Give me enough gold for us to rebuild our city. My people are dying. We were dying before, and now it's even worse. So please. And Thorin is like,
No. He just pretty much is being an idiot.
yeah, absolutely not. And then alludes to the fact that there are more dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
And then we see both sides preparing for battle, and it, they're all like getting their weapons. And I
Yeah.
hate the scene because I'm literally just sitting there like, this is so dumb. You're literally about to kill each other over gold.
Rocks.
Gold and rocks. Yes.
That's literally it.
Right. And then Thorin gives Bilbo Mithril, which is what keeps Frodo from dying in the Fellowship of the Ring, one of the many times that Frodo almost died.
Yes.
And he tells him, I think one of these other guys took the stone, and Bilbo said, oh, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You would say that. I can't imagine anybody doing that.
Has betrayed me. And I'm like, sir, where are you getting this from?
Right. And then I wrote, gets extremely unhinged and starts talking like he's possessed by a snake demon.
Oh my God. I literally wrote that. Not that exact thing.
That would be crazy if you wrote that exact thing.
But I was like, Thorin is like possessed by this need for gold. And I wrote like, it's even like a little jarring watching it. You're kind of like, oh, like this feels really uncomfortable. Like, please stop. Like, it's really not that deep.
Mm-mm. I kind of like love that scene though. As much as it is creepy, it's like his S's start like a little bit, and his voice gets really distorted, and his eyes. Richard Armitage did a great job acting like deranged in the scene. And then like they part a little bit, and the dwarves start marching through, and then Bilbo and him are just like staring at each other through it. And I'm like, this scene is such good drama. It really is. But you can see the like sickness possessing his mind of like, this is so like your lust and your greed for this gold right now, you're willing to sacrifice everybody for it, and in the end you will end up with nothing because you'll sacrifice everything that's worth something in your life to get it. So yeah, then we see Legolas and Toriel, and they're approaching Gundabad, which is where the other army of orcs comes from. And what
I said, because I wrote Kingdom of Amar because I feel like that was something that was said, but I couldn't remember if that's where they were.
The Kingdom of Angmar is, so you know how like there's that one like wraith that's like the lead wraith, and he rides like that dragon looking thing. They call him the Witch King of Angmar. And Angmar apparently used to be a stronghold. I think that's what Legolas said. He said they used to make weapons there or something like that, but it was like a stronghold of the enemy when Sauron was in like human form. Well, I don't think he was a human, but like he was in a person. So they want that they like that area, I guess, because it's familiar, whatever. And Legolas tells Toriel like, this is where my mom died, and I was like, oh, not this trauma.
And he said like his dad never talks about it, and I was like, dang, drama mama been through the trenches.
Yeah.
Like got mauled by a dragon, you lost your wife. Woo, no wonder you
Right.
are on edge all the time.
And I feel like the faintest hint of chemistry between them is like in the scene when he says, like, with Kili and Toriel, just no. But with Legolas and Toriel in the scene where he's like, yeah, my mother died here. And she kind of just like looks at him like she has empathy for him. I was like, okay, we could work with this if you expanded this at all. But no, there was no like depth given to this
Not
at
at
all.
all.
So you're like, we're probably going to come back here because we went through all this trouble of talking about this place.
Right.
So then Gandalf appears in Dale, and Alfred tries his life and calls him a tramp or something like that. Like he says like, we don't want no tramps and beggars or something else. I'm like, I
Yeah.
know you did not just call me Gandalf.
Called Gandalf? Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And he doesn't even engage. He's like, who is in charge? Because I know it's me. And I was like, this is the attitude that I need in my life.
Right.
So then he's in a tent, he's talking to Bard and Thranduil. Thranduil is annoying and he's like not taking him serious. I think Thranduil, I don't know if he was alive like in the time of Sauron. I don't know why he's so resistant to believing that Sauron is like back, because he killed that one orc when he started talking about it. And then when Gandalf is talking about it, he's like,
maybe
no.
it's like a defense mechanism.
Maybe
it's like,
want to fight.
Yeah, it's like he's like, I'd rather be in denial than to even like think that that's even a thing.
Right. And he says that Erebor is the way into Angmar. Gandalf says this, which would increase their power and help them take over like Rivendell and like the Shire and all these places that are thought to be untouchable. Which is interesting because it's like the dwarves value it for its gold, but it has like so much more value. And it also makes sense as to why Azog tried to keep, because I don't know if it's in this scene, but Gandalf says like the dwarves were never meant to reach Erebor. Like they weren't meant to come back. Like that was the enemy's job was to like kill them before they ever got back, because this is like a place that they wanted. So they don't even, once again, Thorin has no idea like the value of what he actually has in people and actual like positioning. So yeah, he's trying to talk them out of war. Thranduil just wants to fight for some reason. He's like, I'm gonna fight for this gold, for these rocks. I don't know why. I don't know what significance they have to him ever. Like at any point in the movie, no one ever tells me.
Yeah.
They see those evil bats and Bolg coming. Well, I think Legolas sees them coming when they're in Gundabad because it's like panning back and forth.
Yeah.
I wrote the orcs are extra ugly.
Yeah. I wrote the orcs are ready to fight because they're prepared. Like they got the whole army ready.
Right. So then Gandalf and Thranduil yell at each other, and then Bilbo is like, I have an idea. Well, no, he pops in. Hey
guys.
And Gandalf is like, he's like, don't worry about it. And Thranduil is like, didn't you break out of my prison? He's like, also don't worry about it. Let's just talk about why I'm here.
Yep.
And he's like, I have this Arkenstone. How about you use it to barter for peace? And they try it, and it does not work.
Yeah.
It was a good idea, but it does not work.
Yeah.
But a nice little line from Bilbo is, because I don't remember who asks him. It probably is Thranduil because it's on brand, of like, why do you care so much about saving the dwarves? And he said, I've grown very fond of them and I would save them if I can. And I'm like,
oh yeah, that's why. Yep, that's why in my notes I was like, he doesn't want there to be a war. He just wants to help Thorin.
Yeah,
like he just wants to be like, I really just want to save my friend.
Right.
And then
go ahead.
Sorry, no, I wrote a note. The power Lee Pace has, my God, it's V attractive, which I'm trying to figure out what scene I'm referring to.
All of the scenes.
Yeah.
Every scene.
But I think he probably gets a little spicy or something. I was like, I like this. Oh, that was another thing when you're talking about like they try to use the Arkenstone as like a way to show peace. I felt like Thorin in that scene, I was like, he's like Saul, like in the Bible, like King Saul, who was like slowly losing his mind. And then like also reminded me of, if you've ever watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, Azula, Zuko's sister, Okay, anyone who knows what I'm talking about knows what I'm talking about, so it's fine. If you don't, it's okay.
Mm-hmm.
So Azula is like Zuko's sister, and she's like a psychopath. Like she's by the end of the show, she starts like losing her mind. Like, and she's like trying to become, what is it? I think she's like becoming like the Fire Lord or something, and she's just starts losing it, and like she's like banishing people and like doing all this stuff. So like Thorin in that scene was reminding me of like both of those. Like I was just like, yo, he's really gone. Like he's just not there at all.
Well, power will do that to a person when it like will expose what's in your heart and start making you think like it was you when there were so many other factors. Even just you take Bilbo out of the equation alone, you would not be where you are.
Yeah.
So he starts thinking like, I'm the king. You owe allegiance to me. And then literally tells them like, I choose war. Yeah. when Bard is like, do you choose peace or war? And he's like, war. I choose war. And you're like,
yeah. And then his cousin rolls up and you're like, oh, you weren't joking.
right. Well, but I think is this the scene or is it after? Oh yeah, it's this scene too where Thorin literally tries to kill Bilbo because he appears and he's like, I gave him the Arkenstone. And it's a nice scene and also a sad scene because he tells the other dwarves like throw him off the rampart and they're like, no,
like what in the world, what's
wrong with you, we're not going to do that. And then he tries to throw him himself and then Gandalf was like, don't you dare. And he has enough sense to listen. And then in the midst of all this, Dane arrives on a pig.
I love how that's significant to you.
It is. It's so cute and funny. It's like it just fits really well.
His persona, yeah.
And I like too how Gandalf says like he's always found Thorin to be the more reasonable of the two. I feel like that simple sentence sets it up really well, and I could totally see.
Oh yeah, because Dane was ready. He was like, "Oh, we're gonna fight. Period. Let's do this thing."
At any point, like, and then when the fighting transitioned, he was like, "We're ready for this too." But, so he arrives to help Thorin, who once again has chosen war. Gandalf tries to speak reason. Thorin's like, "I literally don't care. I'm gonna do what I have to do to protect the gold in this mountain."
Which again, I got really annoyed because I was just like, y'all are fighting over rocks. Meanwhile, the enemy is coming for y'all, like full force. I was like, and after I wrote that, I was like, that's a word. But like, you're just so distracted by fighting over these rocks, these gems, gold, whatever. But there's a whole army that's like quadruple your size that's literally coming, and y'all are worried about some rocks. But okay.
Right, exactly. No, that's true. That's a word. That is a good comparison to like what a lot of us do in real life.
Yeah.
And so then the only reason that they don't engage in civil war is that these like earth eaters come out of the ground and start attacking them. I think Gandalf calls them wereworms, and so they're like, oh, we got to turn our attention. Well, like Dane is ready. He immediately turns and is like, okay, we'll fight them, and then we'll come back and we'll fight them. And the elves hang back for some reason in the very beginning, but the dwarves fighting these, because the orcs also roll in. The dwarves fighting them is one of the coolest scenes in all six movies. When they form that line of shields and then start jumping over, I'm like, period. This is like, it reminds me a little bit of like Black Panther and like the way they fight.
Yeah.
You know? But it was cool. What'd you think about that?
No, it's because I wrote in all caps. I was like, this battle's about to be lit. And I was really excited. I was like, oh, I am in this now.
Yeah. It's cool seeing the way that like the fight choreography is different for the different like people too, because of like the way that the dwarves fight. They fight very like in unison. It's very like quick motion. And then you see like Thranduil later fighting and it's very like arms out, like swords, like
long lines,
movements. It's cool. It fits really well. And so they're fighting. Thorin tells the dwarves not to go.
Yeah, hiding.
Yeah, not to go out, despite the fact that Dane literally came to help him. The elves eventually join the fighting. And then the orcs, you can see them in the distance talking about getting them to fight on two fronts because they can't withstand fighting on two fronts.
Yeah.
I also was confused because Dane was so ready to fight over this gold, but I was like, but you wouldn't fight the dragon?
Okay.
Weird, but
Yeah.
okay. Oh, he also calls Thranduil a sprite, which I feel like is
Yeah.
worth noticing. He calls him, I think, a woodland sprite or something, which is
Hmm.
literally so disrespectful, but so funny.
Especially coming from someone who's literally this big.
Right.
Oh, it was good.
Thranduil's like, I know I did not live 1,000 years for this little person to call me a sprite on this battlefield. um,
Ooh.
so then as these orcs are attacking them, more orcs attack Dale.
Mhm.
Where the people of Lake Town now are, and Bard is like, okay, we're gonna fight. We planned a different
Yep.
fight, we're gonna fight
Let's
them.
get the women and children out of here. Like we're all gonna fight. And then of course Randall is like trying to get his way and get on these, go escape with the women and children.
Right.
Which reminded me of, do you remember in Titanic when like Billy Zane's character, who was Rose's like fiance, where he was like trying to get like on the boats with the women and children, like
Mm-hmm.
trying to act like he needed to get on there. I was like, that's what that reminded me of.
Yeah.
I was like,
It's
you're
like
such a punk.
he's like all talk, but when it comes to it, he will like he's kind of like Draco Malfoy a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah.
You know? So yeah. So that's happening. Even Bilbo and Gandalf are fighting in the streets. Bard saves his kids from like a big troll thing and tells them to
Mhm.
hide, and that's when Alfred is like, okay, I'll help them. And you're like,
Yeah.
you won't. You won't. You really won't.
No.
And Bard basically doesn't even he turns to Bane and is like, take care of your sisters.
Yeah.
We're not even gonna whatever. Thranduil then also fights in Dale and his elk dies. Someone kills his elk, and then he comes off and he has I was like, oh, this is why Legolas has such cool fighting scenes, because his dad does too. Like I said, it's
Mhm.
like very sweeping, dramatic
Yes.
motions, and you're like, wow, such grace, such beauty. And then the
His
tide,
beauty, he's grace.
literally, the tide of the battle starts to change. You can feel it, you can hear it. The
Mhm.
music's starting to sound a little more like
Sweet.
dramatic. They're starting to look a lot more distressed. They're getting overwhelmed, and Dane is literally like, where is Thorin? And like you see like bodies piling up like on
Yeah.
all the fronts. Meanwhile, Thorin is inside and
Hiding.
hiding. He's in his throne room, question mark, and Dwalin comes in. I don't know if does he come in by himself or does he come in? I think he might come in with Balin. But Dwalin comes in and is like, hey, Dane needs us and we need to go out there and fight. And Thorin is like, life is cheap, but a treasure such as this cannot be counted in lives lost. And Dwalin is like,
What?
what? What did you just say? And he absolutely reads him his rights.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, he says, like, you are lesser now than you have ever been. Like, you were always my king, but here in these halls on your throne with a crown on your head, you've never been smaller than you are now to me. And Thorin, I feel like he reveals like the breach that allowed the like greed to come in, where he has that whole moment where he says like, I can't just be, and he like his voice breaks and he says like, Thorin Oakenshield, and you're like, oh, like I see like the insecurity inside of it, because like what's wrong with being Thorin Oakenshield?
Right. You're
You
kind
know?
of a big deal.
Yeah, that's really cool. The fact that you were
Yeah.
able to beat Azog with an Oaken shield
Yeah.
when nobody else was able to, that's a big deal.
Yeah.
And he says like, I am not my grandfather, and everyone's like, that's just not true. That's just not true. And then he has this moment where he goes into the gold room and he's hallucinating out of his mind.
Yeah.
And he's hearing, it's cool. I like how they pulled in the dialogue, like
Yeah.
throughout all the movies, of like different people saying different stuff to him.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this vision of like the dragon underneath all the gold and him being swallowed up by the gold. And then he once again says this line, I am not my grandfather.
And I was like,
throws the crown.
come
Thoughts
on,
on
breakthrough.
this breakthrough scene? That's a good word.
I literally was like, I just wrote like, he's finally set free. I was like, now he's gonna fight. Thank God.
Yeah.
And then they give us this epic entrance that just gave me everything that I needed.
Right. So right between those scenes, the enemy thinks that they've defeated the armies because they're
Mhm.
retreating to the mountain. Dane is like
Yep.
falling back, which
Yeah.
if he had caught Thorin like 10 minutes earlier, I don't even know if Thorin would have let him in, to be honest.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah, that's fair.
and yeah, so then Thorin asks the dwarves. He says like, I don't have the right to ask any of you this, but and then they like all immediately stand and are like, we're gonna fight. Because before that, Kili is like, I am not gonna stand in here. I'm not gonna
Yep.
stay in here while those people are out there dying. And I think it's cool because it's like you can tell that they have like respect for Thorin, even though he said
Yeah.
stuff they didn't agree with. They're like, okay, we're gonna listen to you as long as it gets up to a point where it then intersects with my morality. Because they've said multiple times like, we need to go, we need to help. Like it's um, and Thorin is finally like, let's take a stand against the enemy, and they're like, bet. And since you love this scene so much, why don't you tell us what happens next?
My memory, not that great, but all I know is that I wrote this entrance with a bunch of exclamation points.
Mm-hmm.
And then it was just like they just come running out to fight. And then Gandalf's like, they're following their king. And I was like, point blank, period. Let's do this thing.
Right. So before they come out, I think Bomber plays like the shofar.
The horn.
That's the only word that I can think of. He blows it, and then the bell breaks that wall, and then it like breaks them an entrance, and then they walk out on it, and like without question, Dane doesn't stop to be like, "What's going on? Where were you?" He's just like, "Oh, they part ranks."
Yep.
To let Thorin run through it. So immediately. They
He's
move
like,
out
oh,
of the way.
let's do this.
And then you hear them yell like, to the king, and they just follow without question. And then, like you said, Gandalf is like, oh, they're rallying to their king. And it's like this.
I had chills. I got chills at that part.
It's like a remake almost of what happened in the flashback in the first one when they talk about Azog. He like revitalized the battle.
Yeah.
So he inspires all the others to fight. I feel like that also gives like a revitalization, like a morale boost. Yeah, even to Dale, where the women are like, we're gonna fight.
Yeah.
While Alfred is hiding still.
Literally hiding.
And one of the women is like, you're not a man, you're a weasel to him. It's like, that's true.
Very true.
And Thorin, you can see like this like his character development once again is very, it goes like, and then it goes. Because he's like, we need to get Azog. He's the head of all of this. If we take him out, nobody else is going to be able to do anything because he's their leader. So he takes his best fighters, Dwalin, Kili, and Fili, and they start running up to this little mountain. As this is happening, Legolas comes in to Dale, and Gandalf is like, oh, hey. And he says that there is a second coming army of orcs to where Thorin presently is. And Gandalf is like, oh, this is a trap. Like they're trying to trap Thorin. And you're like, oh, that's not good. Yeah. And they're attacked by goblins as well up in the tower. A bunch of people die. And then Thranduil pulls another movie one scene because he sees like all these dead bodies and he's probably super triggered by it. He's like, that's enough. We've given enough people for cause. Like, you are here because you came.
Right. Nobody forced you to be here, but okay.
Right. He's like, we are going to leave. And then immediately after this, Bilbo's like, I'm gonna warn Thorin about the orcs. And Gandalf is like,
no. He's like, right.
How are you gonna get there? Because he keeps giving Bilbo chances to tell him like, I have the ring. Wow. And he's kind of like, I'm not asking you for permission, Gandalf. Like, I'm gonna go.
He's like, oh, I won't be seen. Like, it's fine. And I'm like, but how?
Right.
Okay.
And then there's this scene where Thranduil is trying to leave and Toriel like points her bow at him or something.
Yeah, she basically is like, we can't leave them. Like, you're being a coward, basically. And I was like, Miss Ma'am.
Yeah. And he swipes it out of her hand because she says like, you have no love in you. And he's like, you know nothing of love. And this is where in my head an enemy lover story really could I feel like I just feel like, and I told Arielle, I was like, I bet there are Wattpad stories about it, and I looked it up, and there are.
She found one, y'all.
They're very intriguing. I bet that there are more than one, but I just feel like they had the most chemistry of her and any of the men in the movie. I'm sure that's not what was intended, but I feel
Right.
like that actually would have been a really interesting arc. But anyway, they have this moment, and Legolas intervenes. Whatever.
It's like irrelevant, pretty much.
Right. I'm like, stop ruining my moment, your emotions. Anyway, and then Alfred turns on Bard, which is really interesting because I'm like, you were all over Bard like 5 seconds ago, and he's so
but that's his character.
Yeah,
he would have done it anyway.
He's so ungrateful. Like, he's like, you're not thinking about the gold, you're just thinking about saving people's lives. And Bard is like,
yeah. That's exactly what I'm doing.
Right, as someone with morality would do. Yeah.
Right. But I think it's also funny because then it shows like Alfred Randall, as I call him, like he's packing the gold into like his shirt and stuff, and then he like turns around and looks like a woman, and I was like, this is just perfect. Love that.
Yeah. So, and it's like, I don't know. That scene is he's just so ridiculous. It like speaks for itself. And Bart is like, I'm not even gonna argue with you because do whatever you want.
Yeah, he's like, be blessed. Anyways,
you're a lost cause. Clearly, I have kids to protect.
Right.
Which, and the kids, I told you this too, that they in real life are the kids of Beaver the dwarf. They're his like real life like biological kids. Which is funny because when I watch them, like they look so much alike. I wonder if they're siblings. They are.
Yeah.
So they were good. They were good actresses. So now Thorin realizes that they are trapped, but it's too late because he has already sent Philly and Kili to scout the towers. And he tries to retreat.
He tells them,
we'll live to fight another day.
Try not to be seen. He like tells them try not to be seen by them and stuff.
Yeah, but they are seen.
I'm stressed.
And then Azog drags Philly out, and he's like, I'm gonna kill him. I'm gonna kill his brother, and then I'm gonna kill you. And your whole bloodline is gonna end. Which, like, ironically, is what happens. I mean, he doesn't kill Kili, but they do die in that order. Yeah. And then he kills Philly and throws his body. I'm like, this is such a disrespectful death. Thoughts on Philly's death before we move on to anything else?
That whole time they're on the mountain, I was literally stressed out. Like, I was like, oh, they're about to die. They're about to die. They're about to die. Like, all caps. Like, Philly and Kili are about to die. I'm stressed. Like, and then I was like, dang, Philly really died. R.I.P.
Right.
And so then, of course, you know, Kili's like, avenge, fights people.
Like, let me run up these stairs.
Run up these stairs.
Unknown.
Dumb. Even though I love you, you're being a dumb. You know, still fighting people. And then she comes in.
Yes, because she sees this from afar and she's like, let me go help.
Great. No one needed your help.
No one needed it. So now Thorin, there's like multiple scenes happening. Thorin is fighting Azog, who just comes out and attacks him. Bilbo is just fighting everybody, fighting for his life. And Bolg appears and he brings in these like little hellbats. And I think it's interesting that that trapping is such like a common tactic used by like Sauron and like Azog and whatever. And I feel like the only reason that he has to do that is because he's weak and he is afraid of being beat, or else he would just outright attack them.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah.
So like Thranduil, who showed up at the mountain and was like, I will kill you.
Yeah.
So give me the rock, give me the gems that I'm looking for.
Yep.
So Toriel sees Kili from afar. And she's like, let me go help him. And then I wrote, Legolas rides a bat. And Bilbo gets knocked out again because apparently he has to be unconscious at least once.
At least every movie.
Azog tries to outnumber Thorin, but Legolas comes in and saves him, which is cool. And then Toriel starts yelling for Kili.
Decides to yell. And I'm like, why?
Once again, you're old enough to know better.
You've been in battle before. Like, what? Why did you think that made sense to do?
You're drawing and she draws the enemy to her. So Bolg comes. and attacks her. So then, of course, Kili sees her being attacked from afar, absolutely without necessity.
Yep.
And he comes in to save her, which I don't think he's ever done. I think she's always been the one who has saved him. And then he gets killed.
Yep. And it was all her fault. Nope. No other thoughts, but it was her fault. It was her fault. She is the reason he's dead, and I don't care what anybody says. And I hate her for all eternity. It's her fault.
For all eternity. I don't know how he dies in the books. Or if I'm pretty sure he does die, but I don't know how, because she doesn't exist in the books. Maybe he just gets killed by Bolg. What?
Said he would have died if it wasn't for her.
In the movies, for sure, he would not have died if it wasn't for her. Well, I mean, I guess we don't fully know that, but he probably.
Either way, it could have been prevented.
She ultimately was the cause of this death.
Yes. Yeah.
And then, like you said, after he gets killed, she gets like a second wind and like gets up and kicks.
I was like, oh, now you have energy. Now you can fight. Oh, okay.
Right. And then Legolas sees them and then is like, let me go help her. And finally runs out of arrows for the first time ever, I'm pretty sure. And I was like, oh, I'm going to go have to fight him hand to hand. And then
he like defies gravity.
Yeah.
Like, I was like, wait, this man is literally climbing air. Like, you're climbing air. I was like, you can defy gravity? Yeah. I was like, what in the world?
Yeah. Well, he's an elf. So he's like,
I mean, yeah.
And even like the way he kind of like jumps and swings on the side of it to like get to the other side. So there's a lot of like simultaneous fighting still. You can see like Thorin, because they're like, it's like Thorin's up here and Legolas is down here. Thorin is fighting literally everybody, and Legolas is fighting Bolg. Because once again, Azog can never fight Thorin directly. He's like, let me send the entire army to fight Thorin. And they almost like help each other while they're fighting. Azog comes out and he has like a big rock on a chain, kind of like the Witch King of Angmar in Return of the King. How he has that big, which I'm always like, that doesn't seem like a good weapon to me because it's so heavy and hard to maneuver.
Yeah, I was like, I mean, I guess if you're strong enough to handle it, it's not a big deal, but I'm like, I feel like that's just so much like weight to throw around, even if you can handle it.
Right.
Like, I feel like that gets exhausting.
And like, why he's so afraid to fight Thorin hand to hand, I think is what that shows me too. To the point where he's willing to bring out a weapon that doesn't even make sense. That like almost gets him killed because you're on ice. I don't know what you thought was going to happen. So anyway, so they're all fighting each other. Legolas kills an orc or something, a goblin or something that's trying to kill Thorin, and Thorin gets the sword out of his chest as he falls, and then Legolas finally kills Bolg, and that's great. It's like a little redemption arc for Legolas. He just cannot be beat, clearly. Yes. He's kind of like Michael, the archangel, a little bit.
Yeah.
So then Azog fights Thorin with this rock. It's like a one-on-one now because all the other things are dead. Bilbo's unconscious, Fili and Kili are dead. I don't know where Dwalin is, probably fighting somewhere else. Probably fighting like the orcs from getting to Thorin. Yeah. And he tricks Azog into like drowning himself, basically. But then he sees Azog floating beneath the surface.
But before that, Wilderness Man comes.
Yes.
Yep. Wilderness Man and Beowulf.
How did you feel about that entrance?
All caps. I was like, come on, Wilderness Man. Yes, Beowulf. I was like, you guys better fly in here.
Right. The eagles arrive and you can see Azog be like,
right.
That's not good. That's not a good sign to me. And then and you see Radagast riding the eagles, which is cool because the eagles like really have a mind of their own. So the fact that they let Radagast ride them, I think shows like his oneness with nature. Yeah. And then Beorn comes in, he like goes full bear. And when I was listening to the Fellowship of the Ring too, they talk about how he and his sons, because apparently he has more kids who are skin changers after, they like keep like a certain land, like that strip of land safe from the orcs, like in Fellowship of the Ring. So he like multiplies or whatever and becomes like the protector of that land. So that's cool. So yeah, so reinforcement comes. So you get the idea that like the battle below is gonna be taken care of because
Mm-hmm.
the eagles are kind of like these like
Yeah.
are supreme
The dwarfs
being.
are still holding it down.
They really are. Yeah.
Like, it's crazy.
And yeah, so then Azog is presumed to be dead. He's floating under the water.
Such a deception.
I know. And Thorin follows him, which
Yeah.
always makes me upset because I'm like,
I mean, I guess he wanted to watch him like die or float away as he died, but I was just like, this feels a little too chill. Like, I was like, it didn't, I didn't get the satisfaction that I wanted. So I was like, this doesn't feel like that's his actual death.
right. And I think my thing is like, I get him following him. I probably would have done the same in his position to make sure that he's actually dead because there
Mm-hmm.
have been times where he thought he was
Right.
dead and he was
Yeah.
not. But why didn't he do it from a distance? Why did he do it
Up
immediately
close. Yeah.
above him? Because then Azog stabs him
Through the foot.
through the foot and jumps out of the water and leaps on top of him and holds the spear to him.
Ugh.
And you have this moment where they're just like standing there, like he's like
Mhm.
pressing the sword down, like trying to get it close
Yep.
to his heart. And Thorin allows Azog to stab him. What do you think like went through his head? Or what do you think, like what do you think his reasoning? What do you think his reasoning was for that?
I mean, I'm thinking like, I don't think it was necessarily like, oh, he gave up, but it was kind of like he didn't really have any other choice.
Mm.
Like he was gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
I think he knew that point was coming. I mean, he stabbed him through the foot to kind of hold him there. So it's not like he could have just ripped his foot out. I mean, he could have, but it would have put him at a disadvantage because, I mean, I'm thinking biologically, the tendons in your foot are very sensitive. Like, you
Disgusting.
ripped
I
your
hate that
foot
scene.
open, like he's not gonna be able to balance himself well enough, basically.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I think he basically was kind of like, hey, this is it. Like, he put up a fight. He put
Yeah.
up as much of a fight as he could have. Um, and maybe it was kind of like, he maybe also didn't want to like die with fear in his eyes or something. Like he wasn't gonna let the enemy could have killed him, but he's like, but you're not about to see me like be scared.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think also he realized like what was needed to kill Azog was his own sacrifice
Mm-hmm.
because he realized that like because of the fact that the weapon was literally part of Azog, it wasn't going to
Mm-hmm.
be easy for him to take it
Yeah.
out. Like it was going to stay there for a second, and
Right.
that the remaining energy that he had after being stabbed, he stabbed Azog and was able to
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
flip him and overpower him and like watch him die.
Yeah.
So I think that was like the ultimate redemption moment for Thorin, where he realized like, no, like the people I'm fighting for are more important than even my
Yeah.
life, not just the gold. They're more important than me because of how, and also I've put them in so much danger. Like up until this point, like the best I can give them is my life right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then he gets up after this scene, after watching Azog die for real, and walks over to the edge and looks down before he collapses.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think he did that? Like, what do you think that was about for him?
He looked over the edge. What was under that again?
He was like looking down at like Erebor, but also like where everybody was fighting.
That's a good question. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I'm like kind of thinking maybe he just like I don't know. He just accepted that was the like that it was the end of the fight for him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily remember what his face looked like while he was looking because he was dying.
He was like panting.
But
Is it an expression of panting?
oh yeah. Well, maybe he was just looking to be like, oh, they're still fighting. Like maybe it was like good for him to see that, like
Yeah.
they're still fighting. That like, I mean, Dane of course was still fighting.
Mm-hmm.
At least like Erebor would be safe. Like maybe he was just kind of like, okay, I'm okay now.
Right.
Like
If I'm
feeling that
dying
way.
for something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Dane does become king of Erebor. I found out in Lord of the Rings, and
Hmm.
is like still presently king of Erebor in the Fellowship of the Ring because they live to be like old.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that, and I think also it was like partially a I just want to see it one last time
Yeah.
situation. He kind of
Mm.
reminds me of Moses, like Moses not being able
Mm.
to get into the promised land because of what he did.
Mm.
I feel like he's kind of that. But Moses died like on good terms with God,
Yeah.
despite the fact that he made mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
So then he falls. Bilbo finally wakes up out of his coma and comes over and talks to him as he dies, basically. And Thorin is like, I know I'm gonna die. Like, no matter what Bilbo says, he's like, I'm gonna die. And he says, go back to your books and your armchair, plant your trees, watch them grow. If more people valued home above gold, the world would be a merrier place. And I was like, this is so full circle. It's so
Mm-hmm.
beautiful.
That I literally was like, not me about to cry about Thorin of
Right.
all characters.
Right. Like at the beginning of
Uh,
the movie, I hated you. I really
yeah.
did.
Now I'm like, oh. But I mean, he died a king, so good for him.
Right. He died like in the true sense of what a king was, like someone willing to lay themselves down for others, not someone
Yeah.
who would hide and let other
Mhm.
people die for something that doesn't even matter. Um, so that scene was, do you have anything else to say about like that in general or that part of the movie?
I just remember when you were asking me like what I thought would happen
Mm-hmm.
with like the different like who the deaths might be. I didn't think Thorn was one of them.
Neither did I.
I thought it was gonna be the old man, the old dwarf man, and they were gonna have a heart to heart moment, but the heart to heart moment was Thorn and Bilbo instead, which still was great.
So Balin, do you remember in, is it Fellowship of the Ring? There's a part in one of the movies, I think it's Fellowship, where Gimli is like, my cousin Balin has these mines. We can go there. He'll throw us a huge feast. And Gandalf is like, I don't think we should go there. I don't think that's a good idea. And when they show up, that's where, yes, it's Fellowship of the Ring, because that's where
Hmm.
Gandalf gets killed by the Balrog. It's like dead bodies because they've been
Wow.
attacked by goblins. They were killed by goblins. Where Mary, sorry, not Mary, Pippin drops that thing down the, do you know what I'm talking about?
No.
You don't remember that?
No. I mean, I've only seen it once, so
You'll see it.
yeah, I'm gonna watch it again because we're about to do a whole nother series. So,
Yeah, that's unfortunately what happens to Balin. Um,
oh.
and like the Kingdom of Moria, which he then goes on to. But I mean, it seems like they had a very happy existence up until that point. So,
Yeah.
but anyway, so then we see Legolas and Thranduil, and they're talking about like what's next for Legolas, and it gives you good foreshadowing about what's coming. Um,
Aragorn soft launch.
yep. But he calls him Strider, and he's like, "You should go find him and figure out who he is. He might one day be a great man." And you're like, "Good job, Thranduil. This is good parenting. You're leading."
Right.
He briefly acknowledges his mother. He cannot say "I love you," but he says, "Your mother loved you." I'm like, I guess that's close enough.
You're right.
I'll accept it. Um, and then he goes outside and he talks to Toriel about love. And he says, despite the fact that I hate Toriel and Kili, I like that interchange when she says, like, why does it hurt so much? And he says, because it was real. Um, I just find that very relatable. Anyone who's gone through like legit heartbreak knows that that's true.
Yeah.
It's like what Vision says. What does Vision say? Like grief is love persevering or something like
Yeah.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and that's the last we see of Thranduil because he does not appear in Lord of the Rings. I don't know where he is. I'll probably look it up because I don't think he's dead. I think he's probably, I don't know, defending the Mirkwood or something.
Probably.
In that time, if they were to give us an account of everything that was happening in all over Middle Earth during Lord of the Rings, it would probably be 50 hours long.
Yeah.
So then Gandalf approaches Bilbo. The dwarves kneel for Thorin because they all see that he's gone. So does Dale. They blow more trumpets as like people honor the fallen, which is nice. And then Balin and Bilbo go to say goodbye. Bilbo tries to sneak away, but all the dwarves come. And the scene is super sweet because he's
So
like,
sweet.
come visit anytime. You don't need to knock. Tea is at 4. And it's just like
such a good, just another full circle.
Because it's like contrasted with the first one where he's like,
Yep.
do I know you? And
Like,
Dwalin's like,
who are
no.
you people?
Right.
Why are you in my house?
Right. So That was really sweet. I enjoyed that. And then Gandalf and Bilbo go back to the Shire, and
Mhm.
Gandalf leaves him at the border, but not before he confronts him and is like, I know you have the ring. So
And I was like, no, I don't. I was like, you literally don't need to lie. Like,
this
we
is Gandalf.
already know.
Gandalf the Grey. That's who
He's
you're lying
not
to.
dumb.
No.
Like, he knows.
Yeah. So he's kind of like, and Ian McKellen is such a great actor because it's like because Bilbo did not need to turn around and be like, you don't have to worry about the ring. Like, I don't even have it anymore. And he's just kind of
Mhm.
like, and then
Right.
as soon as Bilbo turns around, his expression changes and like
Mhm.
darkens, and I'm like, you better act this quick turnaround. um, so, oh wait, actually, before this, when Balin and Bilbo are talking, Balin says to Bilbo like that they're going to have feasts and that Thorin's going to pass into legend. Bilbo says something like, and this is significant because of what Bilbo then says later. He says like, "Oh, he was my," but he like gets choked up and he can't finish the sentence. So we're going to put a pin in that because something cuter happens later.
Mhm.
In the present, he goes back to the Shire. The Shire in like Lord of the Rings and in The Hobbit is just so like oblivious to everything going on
Yes.
in the outside world,
They literally think this man is dead. Like,
and they're
they
selling
literally
his stuff.
selling his household items. I was like, wow, you guys really thought he was dead. Like,
And
to
we're
the
happy
point
about
where
it.
he goes to the house and they're like, can we help you? He's like, this is my house.
Right.
What are y'all doing?
Right. And
And
they're
he's
like
like,
so excited to like take his spoons and all his things.
yep.
Like, people literally lined up the mountain to his house. I'm like, what's happening? It reminds me of like the idea of the prophet never being like appreciated in their own hometown.
Mhm.
Because they're literally like, we don't care, you're just Bilbo Baggins. I don't care what you just did.
Right.
And they continue to think of him as weird. Like when you think
Yeah.
about Lord of the Rings,
Hmm.
they're all like, this guy is so weird. He's always doing some stuff. Like, why is he like this?
Oh,
Um,
that was my thing. Okay, so I wrote down, so I didn't realize again that Frodo didn't live with him. Like, I thought he lived with him, but he doesn't. Because I was like, where's Frodo? Doesn't he live there? Like, how can they just take his house? Like, how can they just take his stuff?
No, I don't know if Frodo is. So when Bilbo turns 111, Frodo is 33. So I don't think that Frodo is alive yet. If he is,
Oh,
he's
okay.
young and his
Right.
parents are still alive because his
Got it.
parents like drown and then Bilbo takes him
Got
in.
it.
So
Got
I
it.
think that he's probably not born yet.
So just the timeline just didn't match up in my brain.
That was a good question, but it was just
I
misplaced in the
was
timeline.
like, where is he? Why did they just let him take the stuff?
No, yeah, he doesn't have any family. So they're like, okay, so now we're going to take all
Got
of
it.
your stuff.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
And yeah, and then this is the scene where I thought was really cute because he's like going into, because they're like, prove to us that you're Bilbo, and he's like, that's stupid, but okay,
Right.
here's this contract that I have. And then the guy's like, who is Thorin Oakenshield, this guy that you pledged yourself to? And he turns and he's like, he was my friend. I'm like, so nice.
So
Because,
beautiful.
and it's even more beautiful because Thorin literally says to him like, I wish to part from you in friendship. And I'm like, oh,
Mhm. And they did.
this is cute. And I'd like to think that the tree that he plants is an oak to
Mm,
remember Thorin Oakenshield.
yeah.
Whatever. So yeah, and then it's like then we cut back to the present, and it's
Hmm.
like a direct lead into Lord of the Rings. We
Yep.
see Sir Ian home, and Gandalf knocks on his door, and he's like, "Oh, Gandalf," because he's like, "Oh, and what of old friends?" And then he lets him in, and it's this nice like little ending where you're like,
It
"Oh,
was like the perfect setup for the
yeah,"
first movie.
and you're like, "Now I have to watch."
Yep.
And the thing I noticed this time because I was writing my notes is the song sung during the credits called The Last Goodbye by Billy Boyd, who plays Pippin. It's so beautiful. I thought it was cool because also like the scene where Pippin sings in The Return of the King is like my favorite scene
Hmm.
in Lord of the Rings. It's just so cool. So I thought it was cool for them to bring him back. And I'm gonna read the lyrics because it's like really beautiful. I saw the light fade from the sky. On the wind, I heard a sigh. As the snowflakes cover my fallen brothers, I will say this last goodbye. Night is now falling, so ends this day. The road is now calling, and I must away. Over hill and under tree, through clouds where never light has shone, by silver streams that run down to the sea. Under cloud, beneath the stars, over snow and winter's morn, I turn at last to paths that lead home. And though the road And though where the road then takes me, I cannot tell. We came all this way, but now comes the day to bid you farewell. Many places I have been, many sorrows I have seen, but I don't regret, nor will I forget all who took that road with me. That is so beautiful.
I love it.
And it's so like, it captures really well this idea that like a story doesn't have to end um, the way you would have wanted for it to still be beautiful, for you to remember people. Like sometimes people do leave your life earlier than you intend them for them to, but that doesn't mean that like you have to look back and see the whole thing like marred in sadness. Um, I don't know. What are your thoughts on like the ending overall, like everything?
Oh, I loved it. I wrote in my post-film thoughts that I really enjoyed this one.
Mm.
And I think that this one might be my favorite out of the three, like I said in the beginning. And I felt like it was just like a really good, like final movie. Like
Yeah.
I felt satisfied with the ending and how it set up like the first Lord of the Rings movie. And then I had asked you this, but and you answered it already, but I had written like I think the only thing I was wondering was like, is Dane the ruler of Erebor now? Because the bloodline is done. R.I.P. to the fallen homies.
Mm.
I'm sure it's in the books, but what happens to the people of Lake Town, which you pretty much told me what happened. So now I know. And um oh yeah, but I think you would also answer this for me. But I had asked like in the battle with Sauron that was at the beginning of Fellowship of the Ring, is that just another war that happens after this one? But no, it was the war that happened before this one, correct? Because he basically kind of died and then came back.
Oh, at the very beginning?
Mhm.
Yes. That was like a long time ago.
Yeah, that's what I was like. I figured that that's what happened.
Yeah.
Um, yeah.
And then
So
this
it's
is
like, oh,
like,
he came back and there was another war, but I was like, no, it was other way around.
yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I liked it too because I think like the spirit of goodness endured no matter the fact that like certain people were gone, and I think that's what mattered
Yeah.
the most. Like I wouldn't have been happy if it had ended with them having to like a resolution to like a civil war and them having to like kill each other for the mountain, and like it ended with someone in the mountain. That wouldn't have brought me joy. Like
No.
the fact that they were able to like part from each other in peace
Yeah.
was the most beautiful part to
Hmm.
me, you know?
Yeah, I think too, it's just like it, not that like it had to happen that way, but I mean like I feel like just like how it was written, it would make sense for how it ended. Like,
Mm-hmm.
again, not necessarily I don't think the deaths needed to happen, but maybe they did, character development,
Mm-hmm.
plot. But I think it would have made sense for obviously Dane to take over the mountain and like everyone just go back to where they were going, because it's like the whole point is for us to fight the orcs and make sure they don't take over this specific piece of land right now. And they
Mm-hmm.
did that. So there'd be no need for Bilbo to stay with
Right.
them. He had to go back. And he wrote a contract. It was in his contract that he was going to be with them until the end, and then he had to go home.
Yeah. And now too, he's the one who gets to tell the stories that might not have otherwise been told because
Mhm.
he like literally writes them down. I mean, it's called The Hobbit, but it's really not about him. Like he's just the person
Oh, he's
who,
literally just writing the story.
yeah, he's like the Luke of this story.
Hmm.
He's like watching all this happen and he's writing it all down. And I think that's interesting as we like once again think and talk about legacy. Like, what stories do you have the position to like amplify that
Yeah.
might not like otherwise be heard or might not be told like in the light that you would have, because it's really easy for people to villainize Thorin looking at it from the
Oh, for
outside,
sure.
especially people like Thranduil or
Hmm.
Bard who didn't see him in the end. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, I know that they saw him like come out of the mountain, but whatever, like they had
Yeah.
that interaction with him. People
But
who might not
even
necessarily
then,
have had what.
sorry, I was gonna just say like even Thranduil, or Drama Mama as I call him, he even just always kind of had this sort of like chip on his shoulder about Thorin. Even if he was helping him, he was still kind of like,
Yeah.
so.
Right. So I'm super excited to watch Fellowship of the Ring because I feel like it leads in super well, which was the intention. of
Yeah.
writing them in this order. I don't know why they decided to make Lord of the Rings first instead of like making a Hobbit.
I
Maybe
think
just
it
because they
just,
knew there was more to it.
yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like there's just so much in the Lord of the Rings that, like, if they had started with The Hobbit, it might not have made as much money or had as much commercial success as it did,
Yeah.
if they had come out first. I definitely think, yeah, Lord of the Rings coming out first made sense. Because oftentimes too, like when like there's like a trilogy or a movie series and there's a prequel, sometimes the prequels aren't that good
Mm-hmm.
compared to like the main like stories. Like some people be upset by this, but no, most people agree. Like Star Wars, the prequels, terrible, terrible.
Logan Christensen, hot. I will
Yes,
say.
very attractive, very hot, but those movies are bad.
Mhm.
So compared to like, the main story, not the main story, but the story that everyone associates Star Wars with Leia, Luke, and
Right.
Han. So it's like, yeah, sometimes prequels just don't hit, or it's just like the direction and the writing is just bad, like they just messed it up, which I
Mm-hmm.
think is the case in the prequels.
Right.
But
So we'll see what happens. If for some reason we end up talking about the Fellowship of the Ring for like over 3 hours, maybe I'll consider cutting them in half
mhm,
and like separating them into two to
yeah,
feel a little easier to digest. But whatever, you know,
we're probably gonna end up talking about them for 3 hours. It's fine.
probably like the length of the movie.
Yeah,
I've
because that's
watched.
what we pretty much did for the first two.
There's so
Like,
much that happens. It's hard
yeah,
not to.
and the
Um,
first two were 30 minutes longer than the last one too.
yeah, I
So,
think this one is the shortest one in Middle Earth, which is interesting because so much happens in it. But yeah,
question.
yes.
Are you going to watch the extended versions? Because I'm probably just going to watch the regular ones again.
It's up to, I was actually going to ask you, it's up to you if you want to watch the regular ones or the extended ones are interesting because you learn more stuff, but if you feel like that'll be overwhelming, we can just stick to the regular ones.
Okay, because I low-key have ADHD. So let's stick to the originals
That's fine.
for right
That is
now.
okay.
Maybe if we reboot the series and I'm like, ooh, let's watch the extended version, sure. But
Hmm.
right now, I think my brain can handle just the regular ones.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's really just the only reason I like somewhat have interest in the extended ones is that it gives us that like this extra scene between like Eowyn and Faramir that makes you be like, oh, interesting. And I like that context. I like knowing that they both ended up happy with someone because I have
Mhm.
nothing against Eowyn. I'm just like, just get away from Aragorn because he obviously doesn't like me. We'll talk about that when we get there because it's a
Yes.
whole other can of worms.
Hmm.
Um, but this has been AM and the PM, the Hobbit edition. We hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you didn't, I honestly don't care because I enjoyed it so
It's
much.
fine. This isn't about you.
It's not. It's really about us, and you're just here watching and
Right. You're here to listen and experience. It's fine.
right. So let us know if you have any like suggestions of things that we should watch. We're gonna do Lord of the Rings, and then we're probably gonna do Narnia, and then I don't know what we're doing after that. Maybe we'll get back to regular podcasting, but I don't really know if that's gonna
Awesome.
be our plan. Maybe for the summer we can just do like entertainment. We'll talk. We'll talk offline.
Yeah.
So that'd be fun. I like that plan. Okay. All right. Bye, guys. See you next
Bye,
time.
y'all.